Hello, New Earth creators. There's a couple things to remember right now as it seems that the world is collapsing around your ears, and some things to really take to heart that will help you stabilize and not give away your power and your creativity when there's a lot of external events creating a lot of noise outside of you. So I'm Catherine. I'm a visionary mentor for other visionary mentors. And for those who are conscious creators here and looking forward past what is crumbling, past what is collapsing and falling down around us here in the US, it's pretty tumultuous. It's pretty ugly. I'm not going to lie. There's um, a lot of people who are pretending that this isn't happening, and there's a lot of people in the spiritual marketplace, let's just say, who are really tone deaf to what's happening and just going on business as usual. I'm having a really hard time doing that. I'll just be totally honest with you. And being someone who's a visionary mentor and doing this for going on 2 decades plus now, I have a habit of looking past the current shit show and seeing, okay, if this is giving way and it's creating a void for something new, what does that new thing look like? How does that start to build from a solid bedrock foundation now? And I'm not doing this by myself. I don't want to do it by myself. So what I'm doing is looking forward and creating something new. And I want to talk about that in a second because I want to invite you to a call where I'm going to be explaining what this is. But for now, I want you to remember something very, very powerful. You are source. You are supply. You are substance. You're all of it. You're everything and everyone, just under different circumstances. You are the creator. There is no other. You are not lost in this shift. You are the shift. And, as things are crumbling, please remember from the deepest, most whole part of you, the pure being that you are, that is eternal and infinite. You already know something that what's crumbling, these old systems, structures, realities, we know it, it's happening because these were built on distortion. Anything that's aligned with something that's more pure, aligned with consciousness that benefits the many instead of the few, that is in alignment with the service to others instead of the service to self paradigm, that's the stuff that's meant to stick around. Everything else is kind of doomed to crumble. And so what is happening is an inevitable process. And I've said it before in a lot of places, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to get uglier before it gets prettier. But when we get lost in the day-to-day, fresh newsreel fuckery of every new terrorization of your consciousness that comes out, when you get stuck in that, when you give your power, your authority, your agency over to that, it siphons off your creativity, it siphons off your inspiration, it puts you in survival mode, fight, flight, or freeze, and it crumbles your sense of inner stability. Because if this dismantling of reality as we know it, this ascension process, which is really what that is, if it's doing anything, it's showing us that there's only one true stability, and that's what we create within ourselves. And that stability is actually what helps you build the bedrock foundation of something new. You have to develop the new internal system first before you see any external system or structure that you want to align with that or resonate with that. Something that's based on ease, based on the highest benefit of the many instead of the few, something that's based on compassion, something that's based on abundance and radical presence. So the question is, what does your new normal feel like? What do you want it to look like? But what do you really want it to feel like? What does that feel like for you? Is it relief? Excuse me, is it ease? Is it freedom? Is it knowing that your prosperity prospers others? Whatever that is, get really clear on it. And then as you do that, embody that frequency daily. Find outlets, spaces, pauses where you can anchor into that daily. It's really important to embody that frequency because it'll always remind you, like, this is where it's at. This is who I really am. This is my home frequency. And everything else that's siphoning off my power and creativity, that is not wholesome to not only me, but to anyone else. And knowing your gifts, part of this core stability is really, it's an invitation to know and embrace what you're really good at. Like what you could do with two hands tied behind your back, maybe, unless you use your hands to be an artist or painter or sculptor, but something you could do, talk about as if it's effortless for you, because it is, because it's something that's so innate, so natural, so organic to who you are. Those are your gifts. Those, when you are paying more attention to nourishing those, nurturing those, coaxing more of that forth, a new expression of it, a greater expression of it, that keeps you focused on the new. That keeps you focused on the world that you want to emerge when this chaos is done having its way. So know your gifts. This will help you anchor into your role. Because here's the thing, you can only, you can't fix everything. And there's a lot that's going on that's very deliberate to help, move along this narrative of divide and conquer, to help facilitate a sense of deep fear, restlessness, hopelessness, maybe even anger, rage, which only equals more division, fighting, him versus her, them versus us. All of that is very deliberate right now. And so you've got to be able to see through that playbook a little bit, because disempowered people tend to remain in fear, and that fear tends to put you in a place where you voluntarily give up your agency, you give up your self-authority. It's very deliberate, it's very designed, it's very sociopathic and psychopathic, but it is a design to get people to hand over their power. You don't have to fight people to give them your power if you keep them in fear and terrorize them all the time. They'll just give whatever authoritarianism freely your power to keep going with it and keep running with that narrative. So don't do that. Instead, focus on your gifts. And I know it might seem counterintuitive, but maybe your gifts are organizing people to do protests. That's a gift. My particular gift is organizing people and getting people together so that we can say, okay, yeah, this is a shit show. This is dismantling. It's not forever. Nothing is. We know that. We live in a temporary reality. Nothing is fixed here. This is an impermanent play with reality. And as sure as something goes great, the next day it's going to go shitty. And as sure as something is going shitty, we can bet that the sun's going to come out. The sun's going to come out again. We're playing with this duality here. So understand it's not forever. And so with that, what does that mean for what's next? Do we want to passively just turn our energy and power over to the old patterns and then just keep repeating this carousel of having history repeat itself over and over again? Humanity's done that very well, but I think, in my humble opinion, myself and many other people, many of my peers who would agree with me, we're here in this time and we happen to be natural legacy breakers. We happen to be natural, bullshit detectors. We have it built in. It's very, very strong within us. We call bullshit. We're whistleblowers. We say never again and no more. Do you think it's a coincidence if you have that energy within you that you're here now during this time when all this is happening? I don't believe in coincidences. So do your part in the new paradigm and stay true to that above all else. That means knowing your gifts, anchoring into your role. You can't fix everything, no matter how overwhelmed you are by the world outside of you and all the external noise of what's happening. You can only focus on where your unique signature, your light shines the brightest. And in service to a new vision, in service to something that benefits you and those around you. So, I have something that I call a visionary pragmatism. And that is that, I'm really good at sensing new structures that are wanting to emerge, that are wanting to come through. And I have a very grounded approach in what I do with my work. So I might take really nebulous and esoteric ideas, but what I do is I tend to build lifelines to those tethers and structures, even if it's just raw scaffolding, to say, okay, here's this big idea, here's this grand vision, but Let's start with step one. How could this work? What would be the first step of making this more grounded, more tangible, more real, useful, accessible, helpful? And so that's what I'm doing. And I'm building out something called Reality Alchemist Lab. And what this really is it's a, it's an answer to a lot of the bloated hierarchical leadership models that I see in the spiritual marketplace in the world of mentoring and coaching that's based in a metaphysical or spiritual approach, where people are coming off with these, you know, perfected, polished veneers. And it's this kind of false light projection that it's used as kind of bait. Like, look how perfect my life is because I've figured out all the laws of the universe and I'm going to share them with you for $17,000. It's this false light projection that's used to draw people into their orbit because just through osmosis, you're going to get something out of being with that person. And I call bullshit. I've been calling bullshit on that for a long time. And I've opted out of that. I'm excusing myself from business as usual tactics in that way, where it's disingenuous, where it's bloated, where it's hierarchical, where there's a kind of pedestal placing and a guru worship leadership kind of mentality. It's garbage. I hate it. I'm sorry, but that's seeing its day. And just like a lot of structures are dismantling right now, that one's on the chopping block too. It's been needing to go for a while now, especially in this particular metaphysical marketplace, the marketplace of energy healers and coaches and mentors and people who are doing, all kinds of stuff like Reiki and human design and Akashic readings and all things like that. It takes an unreasonable amount of trust to be able to not only dream something new, but to have the patience then to actually build it out. It takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of willingness to get it wrong before we get it right. And so I am steeped in the spirit of experimentation. It is written into my own fucking DNA. I swear to God, I'm built for trial and error, which has been frustrating a lot. Because seen through a shadow aspect, it just seems like I've made a lot of mistakes. But actually, my path is making mistakes because then I get to pass on what works, the feedback of the pitfalls to avoid. I get to pass that on to the people that I work with. And I think that that's a great gift. And I don't see those as shortcomings anymore. I actually see those as my superpowers. But I'm asking you to join me in this venture of maybe getting it all wrong before we get it right. But I'm here for it. I'm here to serve life by breaking open, and ushering in the new. And sometimes in very fresh ways that maybe might take some people off guard and ways that maybe other people weren't thinking about, or maybe people who have been thinking about it, but there's too, whatever, scared to implement it. They think it's too crazy. They don't have the capacity to do it. I don't have those doubts anymore. I'm just like, hey, you know what? There's strength in numbers. So let's try it together. And so Reality Alchemist Lab, and I'm going to talk about this more in the call tomorrow, and I'm going to have the Zoom link for you in the comments. So tomorrow, which is the 6th of March, 2025, I'm going to be doing a call that's really just for, visionaries, conscious creators, people who are working in the community and the marketplace that I'm talking about, but it's not necessarily restricted to that. Like if you are doing work in something else, creative systems, but you have a more metaphysical approach or you lean towards that in your life, you're definitely welcome to attend this. You understand that the certain, business as usual model, the tried and true tactics, they're really not working anymore. The cracks are showing. In fact, the cracks are gaping. And there seems like a lot of false leadership out there that really is begging for innovation. Okay. So I want to experiment with a very dynamic, a very heterarchical, which is like a dissemination of knowledge that is horizontal, where we cross-pollinate each other's work instead of we have the traditional hierarchical leadership. Like even in a group program, there would be me, let's just say teaching, and then there's everyone there in attendance. That's not the model I'm proposing here. I'm proposing that we have these, what I call Alchemist Circles within Reality Alchemist Lab. And that's where we have small breakout groups of 3 people where we engage in collaborative dreaming, We are exploring untested ideas. We work together to create new business models that benefit the many, not the few. So this is for people who are the maverick thinkers. This is for the pioneers. If you recognize yourself as being a legacy breaker, someone who's a sacred agitator, bringing new forms that are beneficial to more people into light, into form. This is for conscious creators who already feel the undercurrent of change and you're ready to create and maybe even ride the wave of this tidal shift that's happening. It's already happening in the spiritual marketplace. And I've had my finger on the pulse of this for a while. And the reason I'm doing this now is not only because of, yes, what's happening in external events, but also because, and I'm just going to say it very plainly, I feel like there's an entire systems breakdown that hasn't even begun to scratch the surface yet. And if you think that's not going to affect your pocketbook, you may want to think about that again. I'm not doing a doomsday forecast here. I'm just being pragmatic. I'm being a visionary pragmatist, saying, let's get ahead of this thing. Let's start with real world implementation of something new now. Maybe something that we wouldn't have arrived at our own, on our own. And those of us who identify as the lone wolf maverick entrepreneur, which has been me for a long time, it's exhausting. And I don't actually think that it's the best model for success in my business anymore. So if you're willing to question how we've been doing everything, if you're ready to explore what could work instead, if you're open to experimenting over 3 months together, boldly, imperfectly, collaboratively, in a heterarchical structure where there's a horizontal dissemination of knowledge instead of a hierarchy, in peer-led workshops or peer-led pods where we're going to have groups of 3 people who are going to be matched based on overlapping skill sets, let's just say, but not the same exact skill sets, because that wouldn't make a lot of sense. I'm going to be going into this more in the 1-hour talk I'm doing tomorrow. So March 6th, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. Let's talk about what it means to build a business from a more rock solid foundation. And that rock solid foundation, as we go forward and we create the new as the old systems crumble, it's going to be built more on connection and communication. It's going to be built more on enriched relationships, compassionate, loving relationships. And how is that not going to spill over into our life? Of course it is. This is an idea rooted in co-creation rather than competition. I think we need to leave that model behind. I think we need to let go of this idea of competition, really based in patriarchal structures that are also due for an extinction burst. So tomorrow, Thursday, March 6th, 1 p.m. Pacific time on Zoom. If you go to my email list at catherineMassel.com, all this information is in my bio. You will get the replay if you can't make the live call. I'll be sending out the replay a couple times to my email list. I may even put it on YouTube so people can see it. So if this speaks to you, this jives with your vibe, I'd love to know in the comments. Maybe you've been thinking about this. Maybe you've been like, there's got to be a better way, and maybe you've come up with something on your own. I'd love to know. I'd love to know in the comments. And here's one thing I want to say in closing. I'm not introducing some formula or proprietary method. I'm not looking for something to trademark here that defeats the entire fucking point of why I'm doing this. I want to do this because ideally, and part of my vision for this Reality Alchemist Lab that will be in starting around the 19th of this month, by the way, for 3 months, is to, be a think tank and to brainstorm ways that, like, okay, if you're theoretically going to join this community with us, it's a small investment, by the way, because it's really just covering my costs and for me to be a facilitator of this program and for renting the space, essentially. But we're all going to do this work together. We're going to experiment together. And it's to see how, the real benefit and feature of this is how can you implement what we're doing here in this innovative, dynamic 3-month workshop and lab in your own business? How could it translate into what you're doing? How could you build out greater networks and structures a different kind of prosperity economy that is not built on competition, but collaboration? These are the questions we're going to ask in here. So tomorrow in the Zoom call, I'm going to go deeper into the 3-month layout. I'm going to go deeper into some of the questions we're going to explore. So I'm going to get a little more detailed in that call. I hope you'll join us. And thanks for watching. Lots of love, everybody. Bye-bye.